I'm waiting for, I don't know, 2 or 3 women, a couple teenagers, and 3 little kids to get ready to go on a road trip. So I threw the dice and figured, I'll bet you I have time to make one last video share before I go. I'll bet you I do. So here we go. I mean, I'm a typical man. I throw my shit in a bag, unfold it, and walk out the door. I'm ready to go. I could be ready to go anywhere. You know what? I could be ready to go on a 2-week hunting trip in about any given time. I could be ready to go on a 2-week remote hunting trip in probably about 27 minutes. And that is the truth. Funny, eh? So, I got some time. What do we got? What should I do? I guess I should go... Oh yeah, I got some older ones here. Excuse me. Let's just get right into it. No babbling. This is titled What I Saw. Hi Steve, my name is Tim Goins. Don't care if you use my name. Back in the late 70s, I was asked if I wanted to go hunting by my soon-to-be brother-in-law. After telling him I've never hunted before, I said, sure, why not? So I got my deer license and a tag. We went north of Grayling, Michigan, and found a good place to hunt. Lots of hills and heavy forest. We got there late, so we went early the next morning before sunrise. Now remember, I've never hunted before and really didn't know what to expect. I hiked up a big hill and I found a stump and I sat down beside it. It was still dark, so I sat and listened for movement. It was a good hour before the sun started to rise. I could hear in the distance voices as they were climbing the hill behind me. So real fast I hit my light to let them know I was up here. They must have saw it because they went back down. Now this is when things started to get weird. I was looking across to the other hill and waiting. It just started to brighten up a little and I could hear movement. All of a sudden I see whitetails rising up and the deer started to hop away. They're all pretty close together as they started to run. But then I see one whitetail rise up and flip over. As I heard a squall, and then I saw it kind of fall back down and the whitetail deer looked like it was being carried away. I looked and tried to make out what was going on, but it was still too dark to make out the outlines of the deer or anything else. This all happened within a 20 to 30 second margin. I just sat there as they all just disappeared. As it got lighter, I heard a herd of deer coming right for me. I turned and there were about 5 or 6 does running at full speed right to me. As they saw me, they all stopped and stared right at me. There was nothing I could do. I didn't have a doe license. They turned and started running again. After that, I was hearing slugs or bullets whipping through the trees, kind of freaking me out. So I slowly turned and there it was, a 6-point buck walking right behind me slowly. I raised my rifle and one shot hit him in the shoulder. As I exhaled, I could see him slowly going down. I was proud of myself. First time ever hunting and getting a 6-point buck. When I started down the hill to collect my game and tag it, I see a hunter looking out from behind a tree. I said, are you okay? He told me he had his sights on it. And right before he pulled the trigger, he heard a shot and saw the deer flip over. He said he waited too long, so he left, and it occurred to me, I don't know how to clean the deer. Needless to say, I hit the shit bag and gagged for the next half hour. I never told the others about what I saw, or I think I saw on the other hill. I think it was a good thing. They were pissed I was the only one that got a deer that trip. Well, that's my story, believe it or not. This is in the 70s, and to this day, I still can't figure out just what happened on the hill across from me. Steve, love what you're doing, love the stories, and honestly, I have to believe in most of them. There's some crazy shit happening on this planet, and I wonder how the final outcome's going to be. It's kind of scary. Yeah, I wonder if it is scary or not, Tim. You know, I don't know. I was just actually thinking about that for a minute this morning by myself. Man, the sun's directly in my face, but hopefully this is going to work anyway. It's not about my face. I was thinking, you know, this week when I come back and I'm going to be talking to somebody on the other side of the planet on the phone about everything, and I start to wonder what everybody's doing with the information, you know? And then I started to think about how many people I know who are in my life, and how many of them just don't give a shit. It's really, really weird. It's really weird. And like you said, lots of things happening is pretty scary, but if you really look at it, if you really think about it, what our lives have been doing in the direction they've been going for the majority of us since for a long time, I would imagine, is really scary. It's scary how we're controlled. It's scary to not know if human beings will ever really truly be free, because they're not. There's no free human beings. The only free human beings that are here is possibly maybe homeless people. In a way of being described as being free and not controlled, right? But what does that get you? Not much. We are definitely not a free species on this planet. There's just no way we are, no matter what you think. We aren't. And that's scary. And that's going on since how long, right? And I start wondering, how the hell did my brain get to where it is? I guess it's probably because I was enlightened to monsters who wanted money and power above all, and were willing to destroy lives and families to get it. And my life is affected directly from people like that. That's probably how my brain got to where it is now. Being independent, seeing bullshit at a young age, being aware to it, and then wanting to fight back from a young age. That's probably why I am here today. So I don't know if scary times are coming, or if... I know, it's kind of like, are we that animal that's been in a cage forever, and we've grown to be numb and comfortable to those doors, and now the doors are about to be swung wide open? Is it too scary? Are we perceiving what's coming as scary by stepping out of that cage? I wonder if that is what everybody's thinking is scary, right? It's like, holy shit, I'm about to be able to know truth. Uh-oh, I'm freaked out. I've never heard truth all my life. I don't know if I want this truth, right? I wonder if that's what's really scary for people right now, is because so many people are getting slapped in the face with honesty, and they don't know what to do with it because they've never had it. Right? It's like that animal in the cage. It's like that beat dog that's been chained to a yard and kicked every morning and kicked every night before bed. And all of a sudden he's off the chain and he's got his chance to walk outside that front yard, but it's too scary. Right? Maybe. I don't know. But getting back to what you saw, just so you know, I have had an experience shared with me, I think it was from Dave, about guys watching a herd of elk, and all of a sudden they saw the grass being parted behind a running bull elk, and the bull elk being taken down and then lifted up and gone without seeing anything but the grass parting. So there you go. What you saw is very possible. It's been reported fairly a fair amount of times. That same scenario has been reported. All right. So you saw what you saw, and obviously, if that was what you saw was enough for you to knee-jerk and start searching out knowledge, which would have brought you here, and then you went out of your way to get the email address to email it in, you saw it. All right. People don't think they might have seen something and go out of the way to email this place right here. They just don't. Now, let's get on to some more. A little more coffee so to be sure I can piss somebody off. Yes, pissing people off makes me laugh. I don't know why. Probably because, I don't know. I don't know why. I've always thought the people that are weak in between the ears have always kind of made me laugh. When it comes to men anyway, when I see guys blowing a gasket, it's always kind of made me laugh in a way. Anyway, Sabe Came After Me is the title of this one. Hello, Steve. About 20 years ago, I relocated from the Gulf Coast area to East Texas to join my then boyfriend, who was tired of living and working in the big city. He wanted to move back to his college and post-college stomping grounds. He, Rex, I'm changing his name here to respect his privacy, Rex. It's like the 70s porn name, right? Kidding. Had an old country house that he rented for many years from a man who owned thousands of acres of land, several miles outside of town in the piney woods of East Texas. Some of the land was grazing pastures, but most of it was heavily wooded, with mixed hardwoods, pines, scrub, etc. He rented that house, spanned well over 20 years. He lived in it initially, and then he moved away. He kept it, just to have a weekend getaway place. Then we both moved into it for a while. Just to get to his house, to this house, he had to drive the 7 miles from town out into the country, then take a dirt road, good old red Texas dirt, off the highway that went for about 1.5 miles before it ended in a T section, where he had to turn and drive yet another mile before coming to a 45-degree bend in the road. To the left of that bend was a locked cattle gate, blocking the narrow road that led to Rex's house. From that gate to his house was another 1/2 mile. There were no street lights. These were just county dirt roads, very rutted, that traversed all through the piney woods. When we were just going there on the weekends, we would sometimes go up on Friday night after work, and it would be dark by the time we got to the locked gate. Since Rex was usually the one driving, I'd be the one nominated to get out of the truck and fumble with the padlock combination in the dark, with just the truck headlights to see by. This was before the nifty clip-on LED lights, so it would have been very difficult to hold a regular flashlight in one hand while trying to fumble with the combination and pull the lock free from the chain that was wrapped at the gate and fence post with the other hand. I'll be honest, from the time we left the hard pavement of the highway and turned down the first road, my heart would start to beat faster and my palms would get damp. I can never explain why. I just hated those dark roads. So, by the time we get to the gate, my heart was usually in my throat by then. There was somewhat of a ditch on either side of the gate, and the tall, thick weeds filled up both sides. I always felt uneasy there, though I never saw anything. Once unlocked, Rex drove the truck through the gate, and I'd fumbled in the light of the taillights to make sure the chain was secure and the lock snapped tight. The man that owned all the land out there was adamant that the gate stayed locked at all times. We had one last 1/2 mile stretch to get to the house. Once we got to the house and unloaded the car, and I was safe inside, I'd feel that I could finally breathe. Wow, you're picking up on shit. The house had a wood stove, and Rex kept a pretty good supply of split logs and kindling on the covered front porch. On weekends, we would tidy up around the place, and one day as I tidied up the woodpile and swept off the porch, a piece of old dried alligator gar skull, something Rex had found from one of his walks, had fallen far behind the 3-foot-high wood stack as I tied it up and just left it there, rather than move all the wood again. One Saturday, when we arrived at the house, that piece of bone was lying out on the porch. I thought it was odd, but just shrugged it off and thought an animal might have gotten in the woodpile and dug it out. The skull was old and bleached out, and I'm not sure there was much edible interest in it, so I don't know what a raccoon or possum would want with it. It did look like it had been carefully laid there, as though someone had looked at it and then laid it down. There were not any fresh chip marks on it, and no pieces missing. If it was a possum or raccoon, they must have been pretty strong to move all that wood. Sometime within a few weeks / month after discovering the skull, our nearest neighbors in the country, another 3/4 of a mile further past our house, called Rex at his home in the city and said they noticed water running along down the length of the house and out onto the road. They were on their way to work that morning and saw it, and said they had not noticed any water on the road the evening before when they came home from work. They stopped and investigated for us, knowing we were only there on weekends at this point, and found the outside water faucet near the back of the house had been turned on. This was puzzling, because Rex was very meticulous to turn the water off at the main before we'd leave to drive back home on Sundays. The main cutoff was set below the ground in a concrete housing at the front of the house and had a lid covering it. There were several 100-year-old oak trees around the front of the house, so the ground was perpetually carpeted in dead leaves, and no one would know where that water main was unless they had watched Rex go to it to turn the water on or off. We were definitely scratching our heads over this, but made doubly sure to turn it off at the main every time before leaving to the drive back to the city. Another afternoon late on Sunday before we headed home, we were sitting out back of the house in lawn chairs just trying to enjoy what remained of our last hours of the weekend. Rex fell asleep in his chair and I closed my eyes, and I was enjoying the late afternoon sun. My reverie was interrupted by what sounded like a lion. The roar was very deep and throaty, just like you hear at the zoo or on a jungle movie on TV. I sat bolt upright and glanced over at Rex. He apparently had not heard it and never blinked. It didn't sound extremely close. It was like within 100 or 200 yards. It only sounded once, and it had sort of reverberation to it. It reminded me of the sound the T-Rex made on Jurassic Park. I've heard cougars and bobcats before, and it didn't sound remotely like this. I know there are supposedly cougars in the piney woods, and we had coyotes and bobcats too, but this roar sounded different than those. It was so much louder and deeper. So, fast forward to us having moved to the house full time by the beginning of the summer. Being birders, we used to take walks with our dog and take our binoculars. Down about a quarter mile from our house was an old, overgrown road/logging trail created many years ago when the landowner had some of his acreage logged. We used to walk down that road from our house regularly to birdwatch and give our dog some exercise. We would stroll a half a mile down the road before heading back home. One day we headed down that logging road and didn't get very far when we smelled a god-awful stench, like something had died. Expecting to see turkey buzzards, always plentiful out there in the country, circling around. There was nary a buzzard anywhere that we could see. In fact, there wasn't anything stirring that day. Everything was eerily quiet. We neither heard nor saw anything moving. We had plenty of coyotes living around there. We'd often hear them at night, so it's unusual for anything dead to stay around long enough to start stinking in those woods. There's plenty of things that would dispose of it quickly. We couldn't see anything, so we kept walking. We got about 50 yards or so down the trail, and right in the middle of it was a huge pile of excrement. There haven't been any bears seen or reported here in this particular area of Texas. The feces looked human. It did not look like deer or a cougar or a bobcat scat. If it had been from a coyote, I couldn't imagine how big that coyote would have had to have been to produce that scat. That large. We avoided it and continued on down, and still no wildlife movement or sounds. We had to go as far as we usually do, and Rex wanted to turn around and head back. Looking back on it now, it was though he seemed uncomfortable. On the way back, Rex was searching the trees, and I was strolling slowly ahead about 15 yards. I felt something small hit my head and fall to the ground at my feet. I looked down to see a pea-sized rock. I looked up to the sky, wondering why a rock would fall from the sky, and wondering what the odds that it would land on me. But there was nothing in the sky, and I looked around but saw nothing to explain where the rock came from. Another oddity. I just ended up blowing it off. A few days later, we were sitting on the front porch drinking our morning coffee when I noticed something laying on top of the wooden post on the side of the walkway that leads up to the porch. The post was a part of a small wire fence that used to run across the front boundary of the house. We passed that post excuse me. We passed that post every day going out to the road for our walks, and there had never been anything on it before. I walked out to it to see what it is, and there, in the absolutely perfect center of the post, was a small, colorful shell, like a tiny little seashell, yellow and sort of pretty. It couldn't have been more perfectly centered on the post in the middle of the concentric rings of the wooden post. On the way home from work later that same day, our neighbors saw us sitting on the porch and stopped for a minute in the road to say hello. I asked them if they might have left the shell there for us, but they didn't know anything about it. At night, Rex and I would often sit on the front porch in the cool of the evening after dinner. There's an old vapor light, the kind that gives off the greenish-gray color at the corner of the front of the property, about 20 feet from the road running in front of our house, giving us enough pale visibility to see a small stretch of road from the left to right. There one 80 to 100-year-old red oak tree about 20 feet from the porch, to the right of the walkway as you were sitting on the porch looking out, that blocked a portion of the view of the road. As it disappeared into the dark and the foliage of the trees that lined the road. That vapor light was partially obscured by the branches of another oak between us and the light, so that it did not shine directly on us as we sat on the porch. It was sometime between 9 and 10, and we had gone outside after dinner to sit on the porch and enjoy the cool evening breeze. We were there for a few minutes, talking, and all of a sudden we hear a voice coming from somewhere down on the road and to our right. The voice, a male, called out, "Hey," like someone would call out to hail a friend from a distance, but whoever called out didn't pronounce it hey, as in, hey there. when you're walking toward a friend you know. It was just, hey. The voice was reasonably loud and sounded like it was less than 50 yards away, and definitely like it was calling to us. It startled both of us, and our dog came to her feet and stood erect on the porch next to me, but didn't bark and didn't move a muscle off that porch to go see who the voice belonged to. She loves to chase squirrels and will bark at the sound of an approaching car, including our neighbor's Jeep, as they come down the road. But she loved her neighbors dearly, and when she knows it's them, she would trot off the porch to go welcome them when they pulled up. But she didn't move anything except her ears, straining to hear more from where the voice came. Rex called out, hey, in return. Both of us now alert, yet confused, wondering why our neighbors would be walking down to our house in the dark. They didn't sound like Mr. or Mrs. J, and they never came to our house uninvited and never walked anywhere. They would have traveled in their Jeep and never went anywhere late at night. There was no response to Rex's call out, and yet we sat there looking intently at the road in front of the house in the dim light, expecting our neighbors to walk out of the darkness and up to our walkway. Several seconds passed, and nothing. Our dog didn't move, ears still poised. I whispered to Rex, was that Jay? He whispered back that he didn't know, but it didn't sound like him. A few minutes later, we realized that whatever called out to us wasn't going to reveal himself. After about 5 minutes of silence, Rex said abruptly, let's go inside. We went in the house with the dog, and Rex locked the door behind us. We talked about the mysterious voice for several minutes and how strange it was. It made no sense that our neighbors would come down that pitch black road in the dark at night, uninvited, and call out, hey, and hide. We ruled out a hunter too, because it would be suicide to walk around on very remote private property at night and risk getting shot at by the homeowner. The land around there is so choppy with ragged terrain, barbed wire, and marshy creeks, etc., that no one would dare traverse around there that far away and from anywhere in the pitch black at night. A hunter certainly wouldn't call out to someone sitting on their porch and then not come up and say hello or show themselves. No one in the area does that kind of thing. If some hunter was poaching and was deliberately sneaking about, he wouldn't draw attention to himself by calling out to us. The fact that a dog did not bark her usual alarm or go tearing off the porch to address whoever was down there made the matter all the more confusing and unsettling. Needless to say, we flagged down our neighbors to the next afternoon as they returned home from work and asked if they had tried to come for a visit the night before. We explained what we heard, and they just shook their head, puzzled as we were. The husband showed definite concern as he confirmed the gate end of the road was locked when they came in the previous afternoon. I observed other things that summer. Teepee-like structures placed in tree limbs in the woods behind the house, as well as small saplings that have been bent and weighted with a log or something to create an archway over the pathway. I thought to myself, how does nature create these oddities on its own? They look like they were deliberately placed that way, but it made no sense, since there was no one else living out there and no storms or windy weather to explain the archways and patterns of the limb placements. I always got creeped out walking in the woods behind the house, even though it was fairly bright and sunny when it filtered through the treetops. We only explored back there once or twice, and I never wanted to go back there again. One night a friend called and asked if I could come out of the house to look for owls, and asked if could come out to the house to look for owls. Rex and I walked with him down the road as he did owl calls and then would stop and listen. We had lots of owls living out there and heard them almost every night. We didn't get down the road too far, and I just got an overwhelming sense of dread and fear and told the guys I was going back to the house. They just laughed and tried to reassure me they were out there with me, so I'd be fine, but I just couldn't go any further and hurried back up the road until I could see the house and the vapor light, then sprinted all the way to the front porch. If you take these incidents one at a time, they are trivial, except for the voice that was particularly troubling, and I tended to brush them off and didn't dwell on it. It wasn't until I moved back to the city and accidentally stumbled onto some websites that I began to wonder if all the incidents were related. I found many stories similar to mine about some of the things I saw and experienced that now make me wonder if we had a Bigfoot or perhaps Bigfoot family living out there with us. Many years later now, I've since spoken with Rex, We remained friends about some of the incidents and told him what I was beginning to conclude. He said he would be a bit surprised, as many of his college friends had weird experiences out there when they're all hanging out there back in his college days. He said he just chalked some of it up to them smoking too much weed, but something had definitely scared them a few times. He also told me about a scream/roar he heard one night while he was asleep in bed. He said it was so deep and so loud, and he'd never heard anything like it before or since. He said he thought later it might have been a cougar, because he heard they could scream, but he said he could feel it hit and vibrate his body all the way into the house. That's pretty creepy, right? Even though all these events seemingly unrelated and insignificant, they stuck in my mind all these years. When I spoke with Rex recently, he clearly remembered each event too, like something just wasn't quite right. But we couldn't put our finger on it. It wasn't until many years later that I accidentally tumbled across a Bigfoot informational website that described very similar oddities experienced by other people. Bigfoot was never even on my radar then. Rex has long moved out of the house, and last we heard, the house was bulldozed down. The property is still private, and our neighbors moved out long ago. I wish I could go back there and look around again, now that I understand what to be looking for. I suppose a person could have done the things I described, but they'd have to really gone out of their way to get to our house way out there, and they had to know that they ran a huge risk of getting shot for trespassing. Plus, why would they even bother doing some of those things? It just made no sense. Our neighbors were kind, decent people, and not ones to play tricks on us, and they always kept an eye out on the property when we weren't around, so I guess I'll never know what/who it was. Was this real, or did I make it up? I don't know. That's an odd question at the very end. Is it real, or did you make it up? Well, Texas is loaded with those encounters. The title's a little luring. Sabe came after me. He didn't come after anybody in this story. Hearing a voice, that's not a new one. Right? Many people heard their name called out, or their parents' names called out, etc. Their pets' names been heard them called out of the woods. But there we go. There's another one. Not overly eventful, but the clues are there, right? The clues are there. All right, let me get another one right here. That's a bit of a long one, but maybe the incidents in that story will help somebody else. You never know, right? You never know. Fight or flight. Steve, I'd like to add a continuation to my story that I purposely left out because I felt it was, at the time, probably going to get my story on the do not read list. There isn't a list like that. My encounter happened in Eastern Oregon Archery Elk last day, titled Fight or Flight, and I'm too scared to run. Let me tell you that after that day, I didn't focus on what had happened on the side of the mountain. I focused on what we did see, a massive rectangular UFO that was surgically zigzagging through our sky at a color that would never be detected in daylight, like a swimming pool. You made mention of tagging, and I believe we were tagged by bee sting-like darts that were roughly the size of rice coming down off the mountain. And stopped to talk about it. Mine came out behind and under my left armpit, and so did my buddy's. Mine 1 week later, his too. He was kind of fat. It wasn't until I was watching your early hunt stories that I had somebody's encounter take the words right out of my mouth. I realized what had happened. Sabe never crossed my mind. Holy shit, that's frickin' creepier than hell. Okay, so that was an email. Now here is the next email attached to the bottom, so I don't even know if I've read this, man. Let's read it. Hey Steve, Jeff here from Eastern Oregon. I sent messages through other platforms often, after drinking a bit, so who knows how that turned out. Anyway, I wanted to share this one because it's uncommon to hear of my reaction. This is the fall of 2002, last day of archery season. I decided I wanted to hit a spot that I'd scouted with stinky elk beds and sign everywhere. It just took some work to get to, and my overweight buddy generally liked to stay close to the roads. We came in from over the top of the slope. I suspected elk could be bedded. Hot day, but wasn't going to fill a tag in town. We split up. I took an uprooted tree hole, 4 foot deep as my cover. My buddy went at least 60 yards across to a draw out of my sight. Within minutes of sitting, I realized I was in dead silence, so much that I started digging around on the walls of the hole looking for insects, signs of life. While very eerie, I remained still for around 1.5 hours. By the time I had the urge to make a move, my friend was already making his way to me. Not paying any attention, I started to climb up out of the hole. A couple seconds later, I'm up with my bow, and my friend is next to me, ghost white. He says, "Did you hear that?" while intently looking beyond me downhill. I turned and hear what sounds like 16 2x4s getting stacked on a unit of lumber 2 or 3 times, loud. I say that, he disregards. I focused downhill again and I met with the deepest, most powerful growl my mind can imagine. I'm telling you, I immediately know we are in the presence of a monster. In other words, if a 20-foot tall Godzilla had stood up, I wouldn't have been any more startled. Within 5 seconds, we're flanked by heavy stepping, 30 yards out. It's fight or flight, and I'm too scared to run away. I clutch an arrow in my right hand and charge towards stepping because I already thought we were dead. I'm keeping pace with it, stopping every 25 yards to scan or refocus as I couldn't see anything. This goes on for around 125 yards, and it strikes me that I left my buddy, and he's trailing by about 40 yards, and just terrified. So I snap out of my chase, and I decide to get us to the Jeep a half mile away. Nothing like watching your back and retreat. Nothing else happened. We don't speak anymore, and honestly, we hardly ever did about this day. I often wonder what he's seen or heard before me. Anyway, just thought you might find this interesting, as I did actually aggressively try to defend our position, at least for a little while, until I smartened up. Something tells me that they still think of me being that idiot who is too stupid to take a hint. You can use my name, Jeff White, Baker City, Oregon. Thanks, Steve. Jeff, thanks for being brave, man. Thanks for being brave and sharing that email. And I love that. I actually, in a way, I love hearing those responses because I just love hearing people that go out and fight and knee-jerk react, defend, right? That's what we need. That's what all the human herd needs. The human herd needs those people who will fight, right? When the shit gets tight. Maybe it might be a good idea to send this video to your buddy, man. Send this to your buddy, and then he'll know that there's a shit pile of people out here who are very serious about all this crazy crap going on, and he will have the confidence, possibly, hopefully, to want to bring the topic up and speak about it honestly with confidence and feel safe to do so, right? Might be an idea to do that, man. And as far as seeing that craft, just so all you guys know, I was told in confidence about a person who everybody's seen on TV, who... I smell something burning for a second there. That wouldn't be good. Anyways, there's a person on TV who speaks openly on this topic who has seen a huge craft hovering off the ground below him when he's on the mountain in the middle of the night, and he won't admit that publicly. Isn't it funny? Isn't it funny how people's minds react differently? You can take somebody who's a character who's willing to go on to some kind of reality TV show, talk about all this shit, but something still blocks their brain from being brave enough to tell it all. I don't get it. I'll tell you what, if I'm in the woods at nighttime and I see something, a huge craft below me, you guys are going to hear about it. One time I was on the mountain with my spotting scope, sheep hunting with a buddy of mine. Can you guys even see me? That's looking dark, that screen. Whatever. You don't need to see me. And we saw a round, pewter-colored ball. I don't know what it was, so I don't even know how far it was, but it could have been 10 miles away. It could have been a mile away. I don't know, but it was there. It's just there sitting in the blue sky. And we're like, wow, look at that. Guess we're seeing a UFO, right? But I didn't not talk about it. I've shared that fact on here a few times. But anyway, I'm babbling. Yeah, it might be an idea, man, to share this video with your partner. And the things coming out of your body, I don't know if I've read that before. I think he said I did, but holy shit, that sounds real creepy, man. Something going in your body from the sky and coming out your armpit? Below your armpit? That's disgusting. I wonder what the hell that was all about. You know, I had a thought the other day, a little off topic, I was thinking about all those missing people that Dave investigates. And I would be curious to know, he might know, I should ask him. I wonder if he has found out, or if anybody could find out, if all of the people who went missing, the real weird missing cases, not the typical suicides or murders or accidents, but those ones that are going missing up there or wherever they're going, I wonder if they all had anything in common when it comes to accepting the fact that there is life up there and there's unknown life running around us in the forests and the mountains. I wonder if they had that in common, if they knew and accepted, or if they denied and went about life oblivious to it. I wonder, right? I wonder. Like, I wonder if the people who know are left alone. I'm just thinking some weird thoughts, right? I just wonder if that's a natural, I wonder if that is an effective defense. Because obviously everything is a lot of everything is in our mind, right? Our minds, we don't even know how to use our damn minds as far as I'm concerned. So I wonder if our mind is of the type that accepts all of this fact as fact, if that is potentially a subtle defense mechanism against all this shit. I wonder. Maybe. It's a possibility. I don't know. It's out there thinking. I wonder if all of those people who went missing, if that might be a factor, if their minds accepted the reality of what's going on, or if they were oblivious and went through life just like a bowling pin, right? Not thinking much and just getting knocked around. I don't know. Maybe this coffee is too potent. I don't know. I'm going to get one more out. I think I've been here a little bit long, and I should probably go in and check in and see how everybody's making out. I feel that everybody should probably be ready to go, but I'll bet you this probably got 3 more hours. Right? You never know. This is titled. This looks like a fairly long one, but there's a little bit of battery left there, and I think I'm going to dive into it and do it. This person's probably been waiting a while. I almost wrecked a fuel truck is the title of this one. Let me get some more light in here. Oh. That helps a little bit. Anyway, excuse me. I almost wrecked a fuel truck. Hey Steve, let me first say I have a major respect for you and others like you that don't put up with the horse shit that our world is constantly shoving in our face. So many people are sleepwalking their way through life, happy to give away another part of themselves for a little instant gratification. It's saddening. If men would just act like men, we wouldn't be in this heap of shit we're in. But since the majority of people are happy with their heads in the sand or up their ass, I'll get on with it. It's a sad fact, my man, but there's a lot of men and women out there who are blocking the bullshit. My name is Niles Curley. Use it if you want to, I really don't care. I'm 35 and I'm from a small town called Corryton, just outside Knoxville, Tennessee. I moved to Maryville, Tennessee recently. I live right up against the Smoky Mountain National Park, not far from Mr. Scott Carpenter. I'm a truck driver and I haul fuel. I've had more crappy jobs than I care to admit, but finally landed in the seat of a truck and have loved doing it ever since. Yeah, you know what? I often think about the truck drivers. It's like an adventure, right? You get to see shit nonstop. You're independent. Nobody pissing you off and bugging you. And you just get to see shit all day long. It's a pretty good gig. I've been driving for about 10 years now. 4 of those in a fuel truck. I've seen quite a bit in these 10 years of driving. Everything from stuff that had me laughing for days to things I wished I could just unsee. I have a couple experiences to share that I believe others like myself may be able to use. Moving on. 2020 I had my first and only Saturday sighting. But it was really weird. Not that a Sasquatch sighting is normal, but the way I processed what I saw was strange. I was in London, Kentucky at about 11:30 a.m., headed up Highway 25 north. This is a little detour to avoid the scale houses on I-75, LOL. The highway patrol knows that drivers go this way to get around the scale, so it doesn't matter if I include that part. Anyway, I was about halfway up the highway. I might add that this is not a particularly rural area, especially compared to most of eastern Kentucky. As I come up on a field on my left, I noticed something running along the creek in the very back of the field about 100 yards out. It was clear and sunny, and I have 20/20 vision, so visibility was perfect. However, what I saw puzzled me. My first reaction was, wow, what a weird looking cow. But as I looked closer, I noticed more and more that it just wasn't right. In fact, I was staring so hard that when I finally looked back at the road, I was dropping off the edge of the pavement. Thank God there's a couple feet of hard-packed gravel on the edge of that road. I managed to get the truck tires back up on the road before the truck hit the upcoming grass, where it would have sank and flipped, doing 55 or so. Jesus is 100% real, and he was watching over me that day. Now the story gets strange, even for me. I've been interested in Bigfoot for a pretty long time now. I used to watch that Blanking Blankfoot show when it was on. I knew the show was a joke, but I felt like the savvy could be out there. Then later on I stumbled across a podcast show where people call in and tell their stories. After that I found your YouTube channel, and since I'm also an outdoorsman, the fact that you're a very experienced hunter made it much easier to trust you and your opinion on the matter. I realized that there are simply way too many people with similar stories for this all to be made up. No shit. With that said, what's weird is that for nearly a year and a half after seeing this thing and nearly dying, I passed it off as I was being a dumbass and almost crashed, looking at a freaking cow. But then the more I thought about the picture I had in my head of this thing, I was like, wait, it was massive, and it had shoulders and biceps and forearms, and it was kind of just larping along as it ran on all fours, looking more like how a gorilla lopes along on its knuckles. And it had 8 or 10 inch long red hair, like a rusty red, and I never could see its head, which was strange because it was running parallel with me, maybe just barely quartering away from me. It finally hit me. There's no damn way that what I saw was a cow. There's also no way it was anything else that would have made sense. This explains why I couldn't take my eyes off of it. For a year and a half, I convinced myself this is a sabe. This sabe was a cow. I have no idea why I did that. And even with me believing in it and having been followed closely through the woods by one while hunting a few years back, I still for some reason would not let myself believe what I saw with my own eyes. And yes, there was one that followed me up a ridge in North Carolina while I was on my way to my stand, matching my footsteps. The footsteps are no more than 20 feet away, but I could see absolutely nothing that was making them. You guys know the drill. Thought it was the echo of my own footsteps until it made an extra step. My heart was beating out of my ears because I had driven a long way to hunt and refused to pack it in that early. I continued up the ridge, scared shitless. Luckily, that was the only oddity of the day, other than not seeing as much as a crow flying over. This place was packed with deer and wildlife, but it was as if someone flipped a go and hide switch. Moral of the story is that I can't believe I went that long basically lying to myself about what I had seen, especially when it was completely obvious, which is just a testament to how powerful our mind is. I, like you and a few others, am starting to believe that we as human beings are capable of using our minds in a way that the powerful people of our world don't want us to know about. I have a few other experiences that are related to our spiritual side. If you'd like me to send them to you, I'd be happy to, as I feel all these topics are somewhat related. I'll finish out this email by saying this. There are things that we've been taught not to believe in by society that are very real. Sabe, other cryptid creatures I hope I never run into, God, Satan, angels, and demons. Despite my encounter with the Sabe, the most scared I've ever been in my entire life was during a prayer session with a handful of other Christian friends. Jesus Christ will take care of you if you take him seriously and treat the subject with respect and trust in him. On a side note, when we were making a real plan to oust anyone with the title politician, I'll get my hands dirty. God knows their hands are dirty enough. If anyone decides to get the ball rolling, just write me an old-fashioned letter. They can't monitor that. contact me if you need an address. Keep it up, Steve. Maybe we can wake a few more folks up as we go. Don't read out loud, but gotcha, man. Okay, I gotcha. And I got you. We're on the same page. Completely. Thanks for that message. I'm glad you didn't roll over. Glad you didn't roll over. Yeah, it's weird. It's weird what your brain is conditioned and taught to accept and what to ignore, right? And it's just amazing how many, like I said earlier, how many people I know that they just don't want to know. They don't want to know the truth. They'd rather just stay stuck in that cage with the door wide open in front of them but not go out, right? It's kind of weird. Kind of weird. And I hope many, many, many people start crawling out of that cage and waking the F up and getting control of their lives and their destiny and not letting somebody else do it for them in the direction that somebody else wants them to go, right? It's going to be a little much right now. Sometimes you got to wonder if the internet is a part of our downfall or if the internet is a part of our possible being freed. I don't know. I guess we'll find out. Anyway, I got to get out of here. Hopefully I got time to get this on loaded up before we go. And I don't know when I'm going to be back, but I'll be back eventually. Keep emailing it in, and I can't wait for next week, though, when I do come back, as I am going to have a phone call conversation with somebody of great interest who has the better interest of the people in his heart and soul, and he's not scared. And that is absolutely exciting for me, and I can't wait to speak with him for us.